The cafe at the base of Pinnacle Innovations thrummed with the morning rush, a symphony of clinking cups, hissing steam, and baristas shouting names over the hum of conversation. Emma Langston, 32, CEO of the tech conglomerate housed in the sleek skyscraper above, slipped through the glass doors, her navy blazer sharp against the morning light filtering through the windows. Her blonde hair was pulled into a tight bun, her eyes fixed on her phone as she balanced a leather briefcase and a tablet, her mind already racing through the day's board meeting. She stepped to the counter, voice clipped but polite, ordering a large cappuccino with an extra shot, her usual fuel for the 12-hour days that defined her life. The barista, a young woman with a practiced smile, rang it up. $6.25. Emma tapped her card against the reader, but the machine beeped, flashing. Declined. She frowned, tried again, same result. Her fingers fumbled through her briefcase, searching for her wallet, but it wasn't there left on her desk in her rush from a 6 a.m. call with overseas investors. A flush crept up her neck as she stammered an apology, asking the barista to hold the order while she ran upstairs. But the line behind her grew restless, eyes boring into her back. Then a calm voice broke through, soft but steady. "It's just coffee. Happens to anyone." She turned to see a man mid-30s, tall, in a worn jacket with a facilities badge clipped to his belt, his name tag reading Noah C. His brown eyes were kind. Unhurried, and before she could protest, he scanned his phone against the reader, the payment chiming through. The barista handed over the cappuccino, and Emma, stunned, took it, her fingers brushing the warm cup. "You didn't have to," she said, but Noah just shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "If it were me, you'd do the same." When a drop of foam spilled onto her blazer, she winced, but Noah was already there, pulling a clean handkerchief from his pocket and dabbing the stain with careful precision, stepping back respectfully the moment it was done. "There," he said, "good as new." Emma, still clutching the cup, managed a quiet "thank you," but he was already moving toward the exit, his stride unassuming, disappearing into the crowd, heading for the elevators. She stood frozen, the handkerchief soft in her hand, the coffee's warmth seeping into her palm. Around her, the cafe buzzed on orders called, machines whirring, but something had shifted. This man, Noah, hadn't asked her name, hadn't lingered for gratitude, hadn't seen her as Emma Langston, CEO, but as a person caught in a small human moment. She glanced at the handkerchief, a simple white square with a faint coffee stain, and tucked it into her pocket. As she rode the elevator to the 30th floor, her mind wasn't on the board meeting or the quarterly reports waiting on her desk. It was on Noah, his quiet kindness, and the way it had pierced through the armor she wore every day. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not for her title, her wealth, or her power, but for the woman who'd simply needed a coffee and a moment of grace. Emma's office on the 30th floor of Pinnacle Innovations was a sanctuary of glass and steel, its floor-to-ceiling windows framing the city's skyline like a living painting. But today her focus wasn't on the view or the stack of quarterly reports on her polished desk. Her mind kept drifting to the handkerchief in her pocket, its faint coffee stain a reminder of Noah's quiet gesture in the cafe below. She sat at the head of a long conference table, surrounded by resumes for the new AI division she championed, a project that could redefine Pinnacle's place in the tech world. The candidates were impressive MIT graduates, Silicon Valley veterans, names with glossy credentials, but their uniformity left her restless, each resume blending into the next with buzzwords like synergy and disruptive innovation. She pushed the accepted pile aside and reached for the rejected ones, a habit she developed after years of trusting HR algorithms that missed the human element. Her fingers paused on a name, Noah Carter. Her pulse quickened as she pulled. The file, marked in red with employment gap, insufficient explanation, and a blunt discard. She opened it, her eyes scanning the details. Former lead software architect at Nextlify, a rival firm with 8 years of patents, system overhauls, and team leadership. Then, a stark 5-year blank, labeled only personal leave. Emma leaned back, tapping a pen against her knee, her curiosity sharpening. Noah, the facilities technician who'd paid for her coffee, wasn't just a kind stranger. He'd been a tech prodigy. She opened her laptop, fingers flying over the keys as she dug deeper, pulling up internal records and public data. A buried news article from 6 years ago stopped her cold. Tech star steps down after family tragedy. The photo showed a younger Noah, his face etched with grief, standing at a roadside memorial with a single lily in his hand. The article was brief: a car accident, his partner gone, his career abandoned. Emma's throat tightened. She closed the laptop. The room suddenly too quiet. She saw the handkerchief again in her mind, his steady hands dabbing her blazer, his voice saying, "If it were me, you'd do the same." Most people in her world offered kindness with an agenda: promotions, favors, a chance to bask in her influence. But Noah had walked away expecting nothing. She thought of her own life, the way her title isolated her, how every smile she received came with a calculation. Noah's resume, with its silent gap, wasn't a flaw. It was a story of survival, of someone who'd chosen to rebuild quietly. Emma picked up her pen, crossed out the red discard, and wrote in bold, "Priority CEO interview." She buzzed her assistant, Clara, her voice firm but laced with something softer. "Pull everything on Noah Carter from HR and schedule a one-on-one with me. No panel, just us." Clara hesitated, her tone cautious. "He's in the rejected pile, Miss Langston." Emma's eyes flicked to the city below, where people moved like ants, unseen unless you looked closely. Not anymore. She spent the rest of the afternoon distracted, her thoughts circling back to Noah's unassuming presence, the way he'd seen her not as a CEO, but as a person fumbling through a moment. By evening, as the office emptied and the skyline glowed, with dusk, Emma stood at her window, the handkerchief now on her desk beside a cooling mug of tea. She'd built Pinnacle on precision, on calculated risks, but this felt different, a risk rooted in instinct and the belief that some people, like Noah, carried value no resume could capture. She wasn't sure what she'd find in their interview, but she knew one thing. She wanted to read him, not just his file, the way he'd read her in that fleeting cafe moment. The conference room on the 30th floor of Pinnacle Innovations gleamed, with morning light, its glass walls reflecting the city's skyline like a mirror to ambition. Emma Langston sat at the head of the polished mahogany table, her navy pantsuit sharp, her posture composed, but her fingers lingered on the edge of a folder marked Noah Carter. Across from her, Noah entered, his steps measured, his gray button-up, and dark slacks a stark contrast to the room's corporate sheen. His visitor's pass, clipped to his pocket, replaced the facilities badge he'd worn days ago, and his brown eyes, calm but alert, scanned the space before settling on her. Emma gestured to the chair opposite, her voice warm but direct. "Please, sit." Noah nodded, easing into the seat, his hands resting lightly on the table, his posture polite yet guarded, like a man used to navigating uncharted waters. The air held a quiet charge, the hum of the air conditioner underscoring the weight of the moment. Emma opened his file, her eyes tracing the bold priority CEO interview she'd scrolled after discovering his past, a tech prodigy turned facilities technician, his career halted by a tragedy that left a 5-year gap on his resume. "Noah Carter," she began, her tone probing but not unkind. "Lead software architect at Nextlify, 8 years of patents and system overhauls, then nothing for half a decade. Now you're fixing lights in my building. Why am I meeting you?" Noah's Lips twitched, a faint, almost smile breaking his stoic expression. "I'm wondering that myself, Ms. Langston. My application was headed for the trash." His candor caught her off guard, and she let out a soft laugh, the sound easing the room's tension. "It was," she admitted, leaning back, her eyes studying him. "But I read past the red ink. Your record at Nexlify, those projects weren't just good. They were groundbreaking. Then you vanished. Tell me why." Noah's gaze dropped to his hands, his fingers interlocking briefly before he spoke, his voice low but steady. "I lost my partner in an accident, a car crash. The kind of thing that rewrites you." He paused, his jaw tightening, but his eyes met. Hers again, unflinching. I couldn't stay in tech, not then. The meetings, the deadlines, the pretending, it was too much. I needed time to figure out who I was after. Emma's chest tightened. His words carried a raw honesty she rarely heard. In these rooms, where vulnerability was a liability. She thought of her own life, the late nights spent proving her worth, the solitude of a title that demanded perfection. "And now?" she asked, her voice softer. "Why come back and why start at the bottom?" Noah leaned forward slightly, his hands still but his gaze intense. "I'm not chasing what I had. I want purpose, not a corner office. I applied for an entry-level role because I need to earn my way, not ride on old credentials or pity." His conviction was quiet but unshakable, like a current beneath still water. Emma's fingers tapped the folder, her mind racing. She'd seen his patents, his designs that had reshaped Nexlify systems, but it was his presence, steady, unassuming, that struck her most. She slid a new folder across the table, its pages outlining a senior system strategist role for the AI division, far beyond the junior position he'd applied for. "This isn't charity," she said firmly, her eyes locked on his. "It's what you're built for." I need someone who sees systems the way you do, who sees people." Noah opened the folder, his brow furrowing as he read the job description, the salary, the scope. He looked up, searching her face, his voice cautious. "Why me? You don't know me beyond a coffee and a handkerchief." Emma smiled, thinking of that moment in the cafe, his quick kindness, the way he'd walked away without expectation. "Because you paid for my coffee without knowing I was a CEO. Because you fixed a stain on my blazer and didn't ask for my name. That's not just kindness, it's clarity. You see what matters." Noah exhaled, a flicker of surprise crossing his face, maybe relief, as if he'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. He closed the folder, his fingers lingering on its edge, and for a moment the room was silent, the city's hum faint beyond the glass. "I'll take it," he said finally, his voice steady but softer. Then, with a spark of humor, he added, "On one condition." Emma raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What's that?" He leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "I get to buy your coffee next time." She laughed, the sound bright and unguarded, echoing in the sleek space. "Deal," she said, extending her hand. His grip was warm, firm, and as they shook, their eyes held. For a beat longer than necessary, a silent acknowledgement of something unspoken trust, perhaps, or the beginning of something more. Noah stood, tucking the folder under his arm, and as he moved toward the door, Emma watched him go, her mind no longer on the board meetings or budgets waiting on her desk. She thought of the handkerchief, still on her nightstand, a small token of a moment that had shifted her perspective. Noah wasn't just a name on a resume. He was a reminder that value hid in quiet places, in people who chose dignity over our display. As the door closed behind him, Emma leaned back, her pen tracing absent circles on a notepad. She didn't know where this decision would lead, but she felt it was right, like the first step on a path she hadn't planned to take but couldn't ignore. Noah Carter stepped onto the 22nd floor of Pinnacle Innovations, his new ID badge reading senior systems. Strategist and feeling like an unfamiliar weight against his chest. A far cry from the worn facilities pass he'd carried just weeks ago. The open-plan office hummed with the soft glow of monitors and the rhythmic tap of keyboards, but the air crackled with unspoken scrutiny. Colleagues glanced up from their desks, their eyes lingering on Noah's navy blazer and simple white shirt. No tie, as if trying to reconcile the man before them with the whispers of his unlikely ascent from janitor to executive. He settled at his corner desk, the city skyline a distant blur through the window, and opened his laptop, diving into the I Division's codebase, a labyrinth of algorithms meant to revolutionize global supply chains. Noah's trained eye caught inefficiencies immediately. Redundant data sinks, unoptimized caching, bottlenecks costing Pinnacle millions. He worked methodically, his fingers steady, but the murmurs followed him. At the coffee station, two analysts lingered, their voices low but sharp. He was mopping floors last month, one said, stirring his latte. CEO's charity case, the other replied, smirking. Noah poured his black coffee, his face impassive, but the words pricked like thorns. He'd faced worse grief that cut deeper than gossip, but they reminded him how fragile trust was in a place like this. Upstairs, Emma Langston sat in her glass-walled office, her desk a fortress of reports and emails from board members questioning her decision to hire Noah. Risky, one called it. Reckless, another hinted, their words veiled in corporate politeness. She fired back with data, his Nexlify patents, his proven track record, but their doubts lingered, a shadow over her judgment. Yet, as she passed Noah's desk later that day, she noticed the technical journal she'd left there, now dog-eared with his precise notes in the margins, equations and ideas scribbled in tight, careful script. Her lips curved faintly, a warmth settling in her chest. That evening, when she found a chamomile tea on her desk, no note, just the steaming mug, she knew it was Noah. Their exchanges were subtle, unspoken. A book for him, a tea for her. Each gesture a quiet bridge between their worlds. By the end of his second week, Noah was ready for his first major presentation, a high-stakes review with the AI team and senior strategists. The conference room was packed, the air thick with expectation, the walls lined with screens displaying Pinnacle's ambitious project timelines. Noah stood at the front, his slides minimalist but razor-sharp, his voice calm as he outlined 3 critical redundancies in the data sync channels. These are costing us $480,000 a year, he said, clicking to a schematic he'd built overnight. With predictive catching and a consolidated data flow, we can cut that by 90% in 8 months. The room stirred, skepticism giving way to curiosity as heads tilted and pens paused. A senior engineer fired a technical question, then another, each, probing deeper, testing his mettle. Noah answered with quiet precision, his responses grounded in years of experience, his tone steady like a man who'd built systems from scratch. When the session ended, murmurs of approval rippled through, some reluctant, others genuine. Emma, who'd slipped in unnoticed and sat at the back, stood, her heels soft against the carpet. "Strong work, Carter," she said, her voice professional, but her eyes carrying a spark of pride. "Keep finding those gaps." Noah nodded, packing his notes, but her glance lingered in his mind, a silent affirmation that felt more personal than corporate. Later that night, as the office emptied and the city lights glowed beyond the windows, Emma stayed late, her desk cluttered with budget projections and board agendas. A soft knock broke her focus. Noah stood at her door, holding a USB drive. "Found a bug in the load balancer," he said, handing it over. "Could save us a few hours next quarter." She took it, their fingers brushing briefly, a fleeting warmth in the cool office air. "You don't quit, do you?" she asked, a half-smile playing on her lips. Noah shrugged, his eyes crinkling. Old habit. As he turned to leave, she noticed a small note tucked under the drive. Tea's better for late nights. She laughed softly, the sound echoing in the quiet space, and opened the drive to find not just the fix, but a detailed breakdown of potential savings. Meticulous and forward-thinking. Noah's presence was reshaping more than code. It was challenging her view of leadership, reminding her that trust could be built in small, steady moments. The board's skepticism still loomed, but as she sipped the tea, its warmth spreading. Through her, Emma felt a growing certainty. Noah wasn't just proving himself to Pinnacle. He was showing her what it meant to lead with faith in people, not just systems. The 30th floor boardroom of Pinnacle Innovations was a cauldron of tension, its glass walls amplifying the city's gray morning light into a stark glare. Emma Langston sat at the head of the long table, her navy blazer buttoned tightly, her face a mask of calm as the board unleashed a volley of accusations. A data breach had exposed sensitive client contracts, and the morning's news feeds buzzed with speculation about Pinnacle's vulnerabilities, eroding investor confidence. Directors leaned forward, their questions sharp but cloaked in professional decorum. "How was this missed, Langston?" one demanded, his pen tapping the table. "Leadership should have caught this," another added, her tone icy. Emma's jaw tightened, her fingers gripping a pen until her knuckles paled. But she responded with measured precision, outlining containment plans and PR strategies. Beneath her composure, though, a flicker of strain crossed her eyes, a rare crack in her armor that most missed. Noah Carter, seated near the back with the AI team, caught it, his gaze fixed on her solitary stance at the table's head, like a captain facing a mutinous crew. He hadn't intended to speak. His role was systems, not boardroom battles, but the weight of her isolation, the way she absorbed each barb without flinching, stirred something deep in him. He stood, his navy blazer slightly creased, his voice steady but resonant, cutting through the room's hostility. "If we're pointing fingers, let's get it right. The breach stemmed from a legacy encryption protocol my team didn't flag in time. That's on me." The room froze, head swiveling, surprise etched on every face. Noah continued, his tone calm but unyielding. "But Ms. Langston's been here past midnight, every night this week, patching the damage while most of us slept. She's not the weak link, she's the one holding this together. So unless anyone has a better plan, let's fix this, not tear it apart." Silence fell, heavy and electric, as directors exchanged glances, some chastened, others disarmed by his quiet authority. Emma's eyes met his, a fleeting gratitude softening her guarded expression, her lips parting slightly as if to speak, but holding back. "Thank you, Noah," she said, her voice quieter than usual, redirecting the meeting to actionable steps: new encryption protocols, a third-party audit. The hostility ebbed, the room refocusing, but the moment lingered between them, a bridge built in crisis. When the meeting ended, directors filed out, their murmurs subdued, but Emma stayed, stacking papers with deliberate care, her movements masking the weight of the morning. Noah lingered by the door, his posture relaxed but his eyes attentive, waiting until the room was theirs. She looked up, her arms crossed, not in defense but in a rare vulnerability. "Why did you do that?" she asked, her voice low, almost fragile. Noah stepped closer, his hands in his pockets, his gaze steady. "You were taking all the heat alone. I know what it's like to stand in that kind of fire." The words landed softly, echoing the solitude she'd carried for years. The price of leading a company where every move was scrutinized. Emma's throat tightened. She, who always had a sharp retort, found herself searching for words. "You think that's enough?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Just stepping in?" Noah nodded, his expression unwavering. "It's where everything starts." The city's hum filtered through the windows, a distant pulse against their shared silence, and for a moment, Emma felt the walls she'd built around her roll, her heart shift. Later that evening, as the office darkened and most had left, Emma sat at her desk, the glow of her laptop casting shadows across a report she couldn't focus on. Her mind replayed Noah's stand, his calm defense, the way he'd seen her not as the untouchable CEO, but as a person carrying too much. She stood, restless, and wandered to the break room, where she found Noah pouring a coffee, his sleeves rolled up, his face lit by the soft light of a vending machine. "Coffee?" she asked, holding up a second mug, her tone lighter than she felt. He glanced up, surprised, then smiled. "Only if it's black." They sat at a small table, the office quiet except for the faint hum of a distant printer, and their conversation drifted beyond work. Emma spoke of her early days at Pinnacle, the relentless climb, the nights spent proving she belonged. Noah shared fragments of his life after the accident, how fixing small things, lights, doors, systems, kept him grounded when grief threatened to unravel him. "I thought leading meant being unbreakable," she admitted, her mug warm in her hands, her guard lower than it had been in years. Noah leaned back, his voice soft. "It's not about being unbreakable. It's about being there, even when it's hard." The words settled between them, simple but profound, and as they talked, the space felt less like a corporate break room and more like a haven. When they parted, the air held a new weight, not just respect, but a trust that felt like the roots of something deeper, something neither had named, but both felt growing. Emma returned to her office, her heart lighter, Noah's presence lingering like the warmth of the coffee they'd shared, a reminder that some moments, born in crisis, could change everything. The grand ballroom of Pinnacle Innovations glowed under the soft shimmer of crystal chandeliers, alive with the clink of wine glasses and the hum of laughter at the company's 10-year anniversary gala. Emma Langston wove through the crowd, her emerald gown catching the light with each graceful step, its deep neckline elegant but understated, her blonde hair falling in loose waves. She'd planned every detail, the string quartet's haunting melodies, the digital screens flashing Pinnacle's decade of triumphs, the fireworks set to ignite over the city's skyline. Yet, beneath her poised smile, a quiet exhaustion lingered. The weight of weeks spent orchestrating this night while navigating boardroom battles. Her eyes kept finding Noah Carter, who stood near the service doors in a simple black tuxedo, his presence steady, unassuming, like a shadow that didn't demand attention, but held it all the same. He'd arrived hours early, adjusting stage, lights and guiding staff with the same quiet precision he'd once brought to fixing hallway bulbs. Earlier, when a cool breeze swept through the open balcony, chilling her bare shoulders, Noah had draped a soft gray shawl over her, his fingers careful, his gaze fleeting before he stepped back into the crowd. Now, as the quartet's final note faded and the gala's closing speech ended, Emma slipped through the southwest terrace doors to the rooftop, the shawl snug against the night's chill. The sky exploded in bursts of sapphire and gold, fireworks painting the city in vibrant arcs, their reflection shimmering in her eyes. Noah followed, his steps soft, his hands tucked into his pockets as he stopped a few feet away, watching her silhouette against the glowing sky. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice barely audible over the crackle of the display, her breath visible in the cool air. "It is," Noah replied, his tone warm, his eyes on her rather than the fireworks. They stood in silence, the space between them alive with an unspoken connection, the city's pulse a distant hum. Emma turned, her gaze meeting his, the light catching, the quiet intensity in his brown eyes. "You always see the small things," she said, her voice soft but searching. "The shawl, the tea, that moment in the boardroom. Why?" Noah's expression softened, his voice low but clear. "Because I know what it's like when no one does." The words landed like a gentle wave, washing over the wall she'd built around her heart. She glanced at their hands, inches apart on the railing, and slowly placed hers in his, her fingers cool against his steady warmth. He squeezed gently, his thumb brushing hers, and they watched the final fireworks fade, the sky settling into a soft afterglow. "I can't promise it'll always be easy," Noah said, his voice a quiet vow, "but I'll keep showing up." Emma's heart skipped, her smile small but unguarded. That's more than enough. They lingered, the ballroom's applause a faint echo, neither ready to return to the crowd's chatter. Months later, they sat in the cafe where their story began, the familiar buzz of morning orders filling the air. Emma, in a soft cream sweater, held up her card with a playful smirk. What if it's declined again? Noah, his black coffee steaming, leaned forward, his eyes twinkling. "I'll cover it. Some things don't change." She laughed, the sound bright, and paid approved this time. They settled into a corner booth, the city waking outside the rain-streaked windows. Their talk turned to open doors. The initiative Emma had launched to hire overlooked talent, inspired by Noah's journey from facilities to strategist. He'd become its heart, mentoring new hires with the same patience he'd shown her. His desk now a hub of quiet encouragement. "You're changing lives," Emma said, her voice warm. "Not just systems." Noah shook his head, his smile modest. "You gave me the chance to try." She reached across the table, her hand resting over her fingers, tracing the lines of his palm. "This," she said, her voice a whisper, "was never just about coffee." Noah's thumb grazed hers, his gaze steady. It was about seeing someone and choosing to stay. The cafe hummed around them, baristas calling orders, but their corner felt like a world apart. Emma thought of the gala, the boardroom, the tea left wordlessly on her desk, each a thread weaving them closer. Noah, beside her, felt his past weight ease, her belief in him a foundation stronger than any he'd known. The barista's machine dinged, another order ready, but their story was already brewed, a future of courage, connection, and a love that grew in quiet moments, like a spark nurtured into flame. Outside, the city moved on, but inside, their hands stayed linked, a promise unspoken but certain, built on kindness and the choice to see each other, always.